Good morning. Welcome back to online teaching session of Academic World School Bemitra. So, as usual, our topic is nationalism in Europe, and today my subtopic is rise and fall of Napoleon Bonaparte. As usual, I would like to say that whatever I shall be teaching here, you have to note it down. Be ready with your copies and books, and everything must be noted by you. And remember one thing, that all these things are very important. Pay attention to this chapter. This chapter is very tough, and moreover, assignments are compulsory, and assignments are to be evaluated, and the marks of the assignments are to be added to NBC of PT1. And you know what is the importance of NBC and PT1? Their marks are sent to CBSE. These marks are included in the final examination of CBSE. So all these assignments are very much compulsory. There must not be delay. Okay. So last time we had read about painting of Frederick Sorio, and we tried to understand what did the painting of Frederick Sorio convey. Through his painting, he conveyed a message, and his message clarified that he had utopian vision. Why am I saying that Frederick Sorio had utopian vision? Because he dreamed of a world that not existed in reality. What did I told about the meaning of utopian vision? Anything means if you dream such a thing that cannot be real at the present moment, then this kind of dream and imagination is known as utopian vision. So Frederick Sorio had also dreamed of a world where there would be no monarchy. Monarchy would have been replaced by democracy. Everyone would have the rights. So that at that time, when he dreamed, it was not true. His thinking was just an imagination. So it was his utopian vision. Okay. Next, we read about the various steps taken to establish the sense of collective identity among the French people after the French Revolution. And we discussed several points, like martyrs were commemorated, parliamentary form of government was set up, constitution was adopted, then trade barriers were removed. So total 9 points I had discussed with you all. I had mentioned 9 points, and I hope that you must have written all the 9 points. 2 more extra points I am going to add today. Steps taken to develop the sense of collective identity among the French people. So see here, this was the topic. Last time we had discussed about this topic. 9 points I had written here. Now I am going to write point number 10. The idea of la patrie and la citoyenne were adopted. And point number 11 is equality before law was established. Now let us come to these terms, la patrie and la citoyenne. These are French words, And la patrie means fatherland, and la citoyenne means citizens. So now let us understand what did the nationalist want to convey through these terms, la patrie and la citoyenne. Nationalists said to the common people that your country is la patrie, your country is fatherland, and all of you are la citoyenne of this fatherland. All of you are la citoyenne of this la patrie. Means all of you are citizens of your country. All of you are citizens of your nation. And no one is superior, no one is inferior. All are equal. All are equal before law. So these ideas were also adopted, and it was all just to establish the sense of collective identity among the common people, so that people would live together, they would be devoted to their fatherland. Okay, actually in our India we call our nation as motherland, but European countries, they do call their nation as fatherland. Okay, so all these steps were taken. Now I do think that all the points you must have understood. Our today's topic is rise and fall of Napoleon, and let us discuss about this topic in detail. In class 9 you have read about Napoleon Bonaparte, but this time we will read about Napoleon Bonaparte in more detail. So before discussing about Napoleon Bonaparte, let us recall some points of French Revolution of class 9. You know that Louis XVI had become ruler in the year 1774. 1774. Louis XVI was crowned. Okay, and you know French Revolution was organized in the year 1789. French Revolution organized. Then in the year 1791, constitutional monarchy set up. Constitutional monarchy set up. You know what was the outcome of the French Revolution? It had been successful, and after this revolution, constitutional monarchy was set up. Then in 1792, Republic came up in France. France became Republic. Okay. Then in 1794, Directory rule was founded. Directory rule was founded. Now we are going to discuss after this period. Okay, in 1794, Directory rule was founded, and what happened thereafter? we are going to discuss that. You know, last time I had taught you all that there was weakness in directory rule. Directory rule was not a very strong rule. In directory rule, what used to happen that there were legislative councils, and then there was the directory of 5 members, and there used to be conflict between these two, conflict between the 5 members of directory and the legislative councils, and this was weakening the administration of France gradually. The social sphere, the economic sphere and the political sphere, all the things were being badly affected by their conflict. So one man was there who was looking at them from far away, and he developed the idea, why not I must take the advantage of this weak situation. And the man was Napoleon Bonaparte. Taking the advantage of the weakness of directory rule, ultimately he crowned himself as the ruler of France. He crowned himself as the ruler of France in the year 1804. So my first point. I am rubbing it. Remember, today we are going to revolve around only one topic. It is rise and fall of Napoleon. First point, taking advantage of the weakness of the directory rule Napoleon crowned himself as the ruler of France in 1804. Okay, so this is the first point. Taking advantage of the weakness of the directory rule, Napoleon crowned himself as the ruler of France in 1804. What was his next step as the ruler of France? As soon as he became the ruler of France, he introduced the Civil Code of 1804, which was also called Napoleonic Code. So our second point. As soon as he became the ruler of France, he introduced the Civil Code of 1804, which was also known as Napoleonic Code. I am underlining here. You remember these terms? Okay. So, as soon as he became the ruler of France, he introduced the Civil Code of 1804, which was also known as Napoleonic Code. Okay. So, what was Civil Code? Actually, he established some provisions. He did some arrangement in France to establish equality among the common people. Okay, let us discuss in detail about civil code. Third number point, through the civil code of 1804, Napoleon established the following provisions. First, end of privileges. Second, equality before law. And third, right to property. You can see these three things were established by Napoleon Bonaparte through his civil code. So from here we come to know that he proved to be a very good man for France. See, what did he say? There must not be privileges on the basis of birth. Earlier in French society, before French Revolution, what used to happen? There used to be three estates: first estate, second estate. Okay, and anyone who was born in the first estate or second estate, they got the privileges. So they got the privileges on the basis of their birth. Okay, and next thing, the people of the third estate, they did not get the privileges. They were tortured by the people of first estate, second estate, then monarch. So this was inequality in the society. This was inequality in the society. But Napoleon Bonaparte was not ready to accept the previous arrangements of French society. He directly said there must not be privileges on the basis of birth. If anyone gets privilege, that must be on the basis of merit. Take the example of India. In India, IAS officers are there, civil servants are there, and why do they get privileges? They do get privileges on the basis of what? The exam they qualify. They are not getting privileges on the basis of their birth. So privileges must be given to people, but on the basis of the merit. So the same thing was revealed by Napoleon Bonaparte. Next, he maintained equality before law. He gave right to property to the common people. So Napoleon Bonaparte used to say, because of all these things, Napoleon Bonaparte used to say that I am the emperor of the French Republic. Are you taken aback? This is an amazing fact. Both monarchy and republic, they are paradox. They are opposite to each other. See, Napoleon Bonaparte said, I am the emperor of the French Republic. So how can an emperor, how can a monarch be the monarch of republic? Because republic is absolutely different from monarchy. So actually there was an inner meaning in his statement. His statement carried deep meaning. What he used to say, that although I am a monarch, although I am king of France, yet I respect the sentiment of my citizens. Whatever the qualifications are there in democracy, whatever the features are there in democracy, I shall incorporate all those features in my rule. I am monarch, I am king, but I go ahead with the features of democracy. That's why I am the emperor of French Republic. Okay, next, my third point. Fourth point. He abolished feudalism and serfdom. He abolished feudalism and serfdom. You must be thinking about what is feudalism and what is serfdom. Let me explain. Actually, feudalism and serfdom, these are huge barrier in the way of the growth of any economy. If these things are there, then I am certain, 100% sure that your economy is not going to grow. These are obstacles. How I am going to explain? In feudalism, what happens? Landlord is there. Suppose this is landlord. He is the owner of the land. Landlord is there and landlord is the owner of the land. Okay. Then there is tenant. He is the tiller of the land. Okay. And landlord gives the land to the tenant on rent. So in return the tenant has to pay rent to the landlord. Actually in feudalism landlord act as a representative of king. In European society, I am talking about medieval Europe. In medieval Europe, there was a tradition that king used to appoint landlord as their representative, and these landlords collected taxes on behalf of king. So landlords were appointed as representative of the king, and these landlords thus got right over the lands in the villages, and landlord gave the land to the tenant, and tenant cultivated the land, and in return the tenant gave the rent to the landlord, and a certain fraction of the rent was kept by landlord and rest of the amount was given to the king. So this system was feudalism. In Hindi it is called Samantwad. So feudalism was prevalent in medieval Europe. Okay. Next thing, serfdom. How was the serfdom? In serfdom also landlord used to be there. But in this system there used to be serf. Okay. And serf used to cultivate the land. But it is different from this one. In serfdom, serf had to sign bond with landlord. Bond, an agreement. So in serfdom, serf had to sign bond with the landlord, and hereafter they became the slave of the landlord. They had to work at the mercy of the landlord. They had to work according to the wishes of the landlord. Not only they did cultivate the land, but also did the household work of the landlords. They performed the various domestic works of the landlords. So they had dual task, working in the field, and at the same time they used to do the household work of the landlords. So in this way serfdom and feudalisms are different from each other. Okay, but in both the cases you will find landlord, and the outcome was what? The serf and the tenants used to be exploited by these landlords. So think, as a worker, if you are exploited by your owner, would you like to attach yourself to your work? You will not be able to work wholeheartedly. You will work half-heartedly. and ultimately production will be badly affected, and the output will go down, and ultimately the economy of the country will be affected. So feudalism and serfdom were huge barrier in the way of the growth of rural economy. Feudalism and serfdom were huge barrier in the way of the growth of rural economy. Why? These serfs and tenants were exploited by the feudal lords, and that's why the serf and tenants worked in their field half-heartedly. They could not attach themselves to their work very deeply, and that's why the rural economy used to be badly affected, and ultimately the empire's economy was badly affected. Okay, this thing Napoleon Bonaparte realized, that if feudalism and serfdom existed, then the French Empire was not going to be benefited by these things. They would act as a barrier. They would affect the economy of French Empire. So why not these things must be removed? So that's why he decided to remove feudalism and serfdom. Okay, so that directly the land would be possessed by the tillers, and tillers would work wholeheartedly, and ultimately the production would increase, and the French economy of the French Empire would grow manifold. The French Empire economy would multiply many times. Okay, so fourth number point. Next, fifth number point. As an architect of infrastructural development, he got transport and communication network improved. And he expanded them as well. So Napoleon Bonaparte is also called an architect of infrastructural development. He knew that for the growth of his empire, better transport and communication network was required. So that's why he paid attention to the growth of transport and communication network. He got the transport and communication network improved, so that businessmen and the common people could use this transport and communication network smoothly. This better transport and communication network would be very much effective in maintaining the administration of the country. So he got transport and communication networks improved, and he has expanded them as well, and it was all for the betterment of French Empire, for the growth of French Empire. Next, he got canals, many canals constructed so that farmers might get regular supply of water for the irrigational purposes. He was very much concerned about the rural economy as well. He knew that farmers contributed, they played significant role in the growth of economy of French Empire. So that's why he paid attention to the welfare of the farmers. He got many canals constructed so that the supply of water would not be obstructed. What did he want? That the water must be supplied to the farmers regularly so that farmers would be able to irrigate their fields without any obstruction. So he got canals constructed so that farmers might get regular supply of water for the irrigational purposes. Next point. Seventh number point. He removed the trade barriers. Napoleon Bonaparte did not keep any trade barrier. He knew very well that if trade barriers were imposed on the businessmen and merchants, then they would not be able to function smoothly, and ultimately it would exert pressure on the economy of France. So that is why he decided to remove the trade barriers. Actually, there used to be restriction on the trade guilds. At that time, the trade union used to be called trade guilds, and they had lot of restrictions, and they could not function very smoothly. And that's why Napoleon Bonaparte decided to remove this trade barrier so that the merchants and businessmen would be able to function very smoothly and comfortably. And they would grow, their income would grow. Ultimately, France would be benefited by their growth. Next, 8 number point. So far, we have been discussing about the good qualities of Napoleon Bonaparte. Okay, he did a lot of things for his own country, but he was an ambitious person. He had a huge ambition. He wanted to become the ruler of whole world. So that's why I am calling him an ambitious person. He wanted to rule the whole world, and that's why he decided, why not I should extend the boundary of French Empire. And he diverted his attention to neighboring European countries, and he started capturing neighboring European countries. Initially, the people of neighboring European countries became very much happy. Why? Because they had heard about the good qualities of Napoleon. Napoleon had worked a lot for the welfare of France. So the people of neighboring European countries had bad monarch, and they had developed the desire that someone would come and help us to get rid of this tyrant monarch. And when they heard that Napoleon Bonaparte was coming to attack on their country, so they developed the hope, they became optimistic that Napoleon Bonaparte would come and rule their country, and ultimately they would get rid of their bad monarch. So they were very much excited. Napoleon Bonaparte is coming, and the same benefit we are going to get, the benefit that has been received by the people of France. So 8 number. Napoleon Bonaparte was considered as a harbinger of liberty when he by the colonial people when he captured the neighboring European countries. Napoleon Bonaparte was considered as a harbinger of liberty by his colonial people when he captured the neighboring European countries. So, I have already discussed that the country that he captured, there the people became very happy that this man is good man because he has worked a lot for the welfare of the people of his own country, and same benefit we are going to receive. But their initial enthusiasm, their initial excitement broke into millions of pieces when they saw the horrible form of Napoleon. They realized that this man is human being, but this man is not actually human being. In fact, this man is monster demon in the disguise of human being. This man is monster or demon in the disguise of human being. Actually, what he did with the colonial people, so that the colonial people started hating Napoleon Bonaparte. He did not prove to be very good ruler for his colonial people because he imposed lot of restriction on those people, and they realized that this man is not going to be good for us. Okay, he took very harsh steps for his colonial people. Point number 9. He took harsh steps for his colonial people. These steps were: first, high taxation; second, forced conscription; and censorship. These three harsh steps were taken by Napoleon Bonaparte. In his colony, he increased the taxes. In his colony, he exerted pressure on the colonial people to join the army. However, they were not willing. They had not a willingness to join the army, but they were pressurized by Napoleon Bonaparte to join the army. This was forced conscription. Then he snatched away the liberty of the media. He took away the liberty of media. Okay, so that's why the colonial people understood that this man is not a man. In fact, this man is demon or monster in the disguise of human being. Okay, lastly, point number 10. Point number 10. England, Russia, Austria, and Prussia decided to join hands in order to curb the growing power of Napoleon Bonaparte. England, Russia, Austria and Prussia decided to join hands in order to curb the growing power of Napoleon Bonaparte. In fact, even the colonial people requested these countries that come, help us get rid of this cruel monarch. And apart from all these things, you know that Napoleon Bonaparte was going on capturing the neighboring European countries. So these countries were also in danger. So finally, they decided to take action before anything bad happens. They joined hands and decided to fight against Napoleon. Okay, so point number 11 is about Battle of Waterloo. Finally, Battle of Waterloo took place in the year 1850. Okay, in the Battle of Waterloo, on one side Napoleon Bonaparte was there. On the other sides, countries like England, Russia, Austria and Prussia were there. What do you think? That England, Russia, Austria, Prussia, they had developed limbs and came walking there? No, actually their soldiers had arrived there to fight on behalf of England, Russia, Austria and Prussia. So you think what Napoleon Bonaparte might have thought at that time? This side only Napoleon Bonaparte is there. Napoleon Bonaparte is all alone. And on the other side, there are countries like England, Russia, Austria and Prussia. So on one side, Napoleon Bonaparte is there. On the other side, England, Russia, Austria and Prussia are there. This is absolutely injustice. But Napoleon Bonaparte is a fearless man. Napoleon Bonaparte doesn't fear from fear, but fears from Napoleon Bonaparte. Napoleon Bonaparte will fight against these countries. And finally, the battle took place. Vigorous battle took place, horrible battle took place in the year 1815 at the Battle of Waterloo. Okay, and in this battle, whatever destiny had been written, that happened. Do you know what happened? Unfortunately, Mr. Napoleon Bonaparte was badly defeated by England, Russia, Austria and Prussia. So the Battle of Waterloo proved to be very minus point in the life of Napoleon. In this way, the power of Napoleon eventually collapsed. Okay, so I am writing this point here. Eventually, Napoleon was defeated at the Battle of Waterloo in the year 1815 by England, Russia, Austria and France. Okay, so this is the climax of Napoleon Bonaparte. Napoleon Bonaparte was badly defeated in the Battle of Waterloo by England, Russia, Austria and France. Okay, so here I am going to wrap up my chapter, and my today's assignment will be based on this. Very easy. I do know that you might have written just you see the assignment question and copy it down. Okay. The question is, describe the rise and Fall of Napoleon Bonaparte. Remember, 2 pages I have taught today, only 2 pages, and slowly I am teaching so that you may understand, because it is the toughest chapter of history. So this is the assignment, you have to complete it. Okay, stay safe. Bye.